Join me for a delightful conversation with Dallas superfan Josh Eilberg. Josh is the enthusiastic co-host and social media guru of the Ewing Barbecue Podcast, a fun, fan-driven rewatch and discussion show dedicated to the iconic primetime show Dallas. He knows more about JR's schemes than anyone on the planet. He even consulted on the 2012 revival, appeared as an extra, and was named the world's foremost expert by Larry Hagman himself. So grab yourself some sweet tea and settle in for an enlightening show all about Dallas. Thank you for joining me. Today I have on Dallas superfan Josh Eilberg. Josh, thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to coordinate for a while, and it's finally happening. So
yeah,
glad to be here.
It's been tough. My schedule this year has been crazy for a girl who this is all she does. It's been crazy. But we made it today. Thank God for that. And thank Alan. Alan's been setting all this up for me. We love Alan, and I just really appreciate him too. So
he's putting the Dallas train in there, isn't he?
Yeah, he sure does. So I want to tell everybody who you are. Like I said, you have been a Dallas super fan since age 5. The original Dallas ran from 1978 to 1991. And at age 5, you started watching the show, which I feel like is kind of young to start watching it. What was it about the show that captured your attention at that age?
Well, don't tell the Department of Social Services that parents are putting me in front of that at 5 years old. I think my family was watching, and it was Friday nights. You had the Incredible Hulk, the Dukes of Hazzard, Dallas. Mm-hmm. But Dallas actually started on a Sunday night, so I don't know what they were thinking. I don't have a lot of strong memories of those early times, right up until probably when they had the Southfork fire in the end of 82, 83. When you're a little kid and you're going, oh, fire, that's got my attention.
Yeah.
But, it's just a good continuation of you put the kid in front of the TV on Friday nights, and that's your babysitter. So,
yeah. Yeah. And it was such a good show. My husband that passed away a year and a half ago, he was older than me. So he had a whole family before I ever met him. And so he would come home on Fridays. They would have dinner. Everybody would get the kids, his children would get their baths, and they gathered in front of the TV. And his kids were little, like they're younger than I am. And so they would all watch it together as a family. And I always thought, wasn't that a little, because there were some scenes, but I remember my mom had the paperback book, and I was probably about 9 years old, and I got hold of that thing, and I was reading it, and even though I didn't know what words were, I somehow knew that they were dirty. And I remember taking it in the car with us and hiding in the floor in the back seat and reading that book at like 9 years old. So yeah.
Well, I have to say, though, we remember when drive-ins were popular around the area.
Yeah,
we had a drive-in, and my parents, I think it was probably 4 or 5 somewhere. And they took us all to the movies at the drive-in. They threw the blanket over me so they could get in because they were going to see Saturday Night Fever, and that's not a movie you want your children to be seeing at that age. And then I'm listening to the Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf at that age. So,
I think times were just different back then. Honestly, I think that, I just don't think people paid attention or I don't know. It's like our generation, we grew up.
Well, we drank out of garden hoses, and the street light comes on. That means get your butt home.
Yep.
And
we were just a different animal.
lead paint, no seatbelts, no bike helmets.
Yep.
It was just, and we're completely fine now.
Yeah, one time I fell out of the car. My mom was driving, and I fell out of the car. And it was like, get up and get back in. So.
And I remember I would go to my father's place of business that he worked and that he owned, and one of his employees is the brother of David Kelly, the producer.
Oh, yeah.
And I would be making they were doing a division of Omaha steaks, and I would be making the boxes and everything. And we would go for lunch, and David's brother would be driving the van. I'd be in the back. There was no seatbelt. He'd be taking the corners sharp, and I'd be flopping all over the back of the van. And you can't get away with that now.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah, you
you
and
get
your
away.
kids would get taken away. I mean, which, I can see, listen, I can see both sides. I can see wanting to be safe and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
even my son is 34, and even when he was little, I look back and I'm like, there's times when he was little and I'm like, why didn't I have him in a car seat? Like now,
Well, that's one thing we brought up on the podcast is remember when Bobby bought Christopher from Jeff Faraday,
yeah.
and he puts the car seat in the front seat of the convertible, facing forward, no seatbelt, slaps the kid in there, and just drives away. And we're sitting there going, "Oh, that was 1981 or
Yeah.
82. Yeah, you can't get away with that now.
Yeah. I
And
belong
you
to a
need a
lot.
science degree to put the car seats in now."
Oh God, I know. Even to get a kid in and out of one too. I belong to several Knots Landing groups, and sometimes we have people on there who will dissect certain storylines or certain scenes. And about a month ago, this lady, she was really upset about something. And I said, you have to remember the time. You can't judge that scene by what's going on in the world today. You have to remember at the time they were doing what they knew to do. You know what I'm saying? So it's just
Right.
a whole different time.
It's all a snapshot in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Which gets me with Disney and the whole Song of the South thing. I say, just put a disclaimer in the front saying it's something that was made at that time, and this is what our world was, but it doesn't reflect the views of our company, blah, 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 and
yeah.
release it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. But like I said, on the other hand, I could understand some things, but it's just times are different. That's all I could say. So, but I want to talk about how you started going to all the events that you go to, and the events, that like Southfork and all that. So your first event was with Linda Gray in 2008, and it was called Fansource Weekend. Is that true?
FanSource, they were trying to raise money. I think there were 75 fans there, and it was a weekend of stuff that there was meet and greets, and then there was a big dinner the final night. And the money being raised was to go to get Linda Gray her star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which never ended up happening.
Oh no.
So if anyone wants to kick that off again and get her
Oh,
star, she should have it near
she
Larry.
deserves one. Yes,
She deserves
absolutely.
one. But they had Linda was there. Patrick was supposed to go, but he couldn't make it, so he had to back out. Larry came in with his wife Mai. Charlene brought Cherish, her daughter. Morgan Fairchild was there. Christopher Atkins, and Fern Fitzgerald was supposed to go, who played Marilee Stone, and she another commitment had to cancel, and so they replaced her with Deborah Renard and her husband at the time, Paul Haggis, the movie producer. And that led to an interesting offshoot of, I can get into in a moment or two, but the one that surprised everybody that went was Omri Katz, who had not seen Larry or Linda since 1995 or so when they filmed JR Returns. I was friends with him on MySpace, and I said, "Oh, are you going?" So I kept needling him, and he ended up finally going at the last minute, and that was his first fan convention. Now he does all the hocus pocus stuff. And we were there, and we decided Larry and Linda did not know he was going to be there that weekend because they had brought people. They brought each person in, and they did their autograph session and a Q&A, and then they would leave, and the next one would come, and so forth. So we decided to hide anything to do with Omri. And so when they had the fan dinner, they had the big table up at the stage, and they had an empty seat next to Larry and Linda. And I had to hide Omri out in the courtyard. I remember we were sitting out there just chatting. Christopher Atkins gets up and he goes, "Larry, Linda, we have actually a surprise for you." And they brought Omri in, and they had a big reunion, and they hugged and everything. So I felt like I pranked Larry and Linda, and Larry is of course a prankster on the show,
I've
you
heard
know.
that. Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, score one." Yeah, so that was a great event. And then 3 weeks later, they had the 2008 30th anniversary event at Southfork, which was a a disaster from everything you've probably heard about.
No, I haven't. What
No?
happened?
Oh,
No,
wow.
I haven't.
There were different tiered tickets and they oversold the event, and
Mm.
people that paid the higher prices were not getting what they paid for, and I ended up getting 500 back from my credit card company. So even
Gosh.
though I got everything that I got and paid for, but it was just, and I met some people there, and Rex Mon, the owner of the ranch, actually came over to the Southfork Hotel. I don't know if you ever remember there being a hotel associated with the ranch, and he actually bought us all drinks
Oh, wow.
in the bar that night at the Cattlemen's Club. So you meet some people, you start talking, and you become friends. And one of them that I met at Fan Source was Melanie Joy from North Carolina, originally from Maine, and she has now become one of the co-hosts on the podcast. So it's uh, just years later, just all these connections and stuff, which it'll be an interesting story of how the podcast came to be
Yeah.
when we get there.
Yeah.
And
So,
then,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh no, and then 2010 they were doing an event in New Jersey called Chiller, and they had Larry, Linda, Charlene, Patrick, um, Barbara Eden, and Bill Daly were there as well, with Mario Della Casa, who does the genie bottles. So I went down to that, and I remember coming off the train, calling the hotel for the shuttle, and some lady comes over and she goes, "Oh, are you waiting for the shuttle?" And I said, "Yeah, I just called." And they said, "Oh, these people around the corner are waiting." So she takes me around the corner. And I said, "Who?" She said, "Those people over there." And I said, "Ma'am, that's Larry Hagman."
Those people over there.
So I walked over. I said, "Oh, Larry, I just called for the shuttle. They're going to come around the other side." So we walk over. Gust of wind takes his cowboy hat flying across the parking lot. I'm running with my luggage in one hand, chasing down his cowboy hat, which is blowing in the wind, and I grab him. So we all rode to the hotel in the shuttle together. And
Oh, that's so cool.
it was just like the start of something there. And
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because, like, in 2010, you started helping with the Ultimate Dallas fan site,
mm-hmm.
and which eventually led to you being on the series, right? Got a part in the series, the revival.
As an extra, and I went down. I think they mistook me because they really wanted people from Texas,
Uh,
and I kept saying I'm from Boston, and they thought I was saying Austin.
oh.
But I went down anyway. I was going. You told me I'm on, so I'm on. But we're filming 12 hours the whole day and everything, and we're needling Jesse Metcalf a little bit during between takes. And I don't know if you've ever been an extra on a show or in a production like this, but
No.
you film for 12 hours and you barely get 3 scenes done, and they wind up on the cutting room floor, and all you see of yourself is your elbow.
Yeah.
But I was there, and in fact, there are pictures that surface of Larry and Linda dancing at this barbecue episode. It was a barbecue episode, and that got cut. And a lot of people after Larry passed were very upset that scene got cut. And I said, "Yep." I was about 10 feet away off camera while they were filming that scene, watching them. And it's interesting when you're an extra because you're not supposed to talk to the talent.
Yeah.
And the production assistant had me herded off to the side. And I had already gotten to know Linda Gray at this point from a few events. So we're off to the side. Linda Gray starts waving at me and yelling for me, and she's like motioning me to come over. And so I turn to the handler and I go, "Yeah, I'm going over. Linda's calling me." So the PA lost control at that point. And so I went and sat with her and Larry for a little while, and while they were setting up a shot and everything. And it was just great experience being on that side of it. And
Yeah, I was going to ask you what does it feel like being a fan and then being pulled into the inside like that? It has to be because, like, listen, if I ever had anything to do with not saying, like, I wrote a treatment and I took it to Donna, Michelle, and Joan at the Southfork Experience. Like, it was a big Donna talked about it on the podcast, and she said this woman wrote a Bible, and it's for Not Saying revival, like a reboot, not a reboot, but like a revival. And so I was like, please try to make this happen. But anyway, if that ever happened, I could go ahead and be like, okay, my life is over. I can die.
Well, it's funny because I was at work one day. I was running a media department at a college outside of just outside of Boston, and my phone rings in the middle of the day one day. And I'm going, is this who I think it is? And I picked up the phone. It was Audrey Landers out of the
Oh,
blue.
wow.
And she said, "Oh, I remember that you lived up in the Boston area, and we're going to be up there visiting a relative." Or where, and they said, "Do you want to come down and have breakfast with my husband and I at the Four Seasons?"
Of course.
This was on a Friday. They wanted me to come down on a Saturday, and it was Easter weekend. So I said, "Yeah, I'll be there." And then I get off the phone. I'm going, I grew up watching these people on television. Now they're calling me on my telephone.
Yeah.
It's like, what? How did that happen?
Yeah. It's very surreal. And I'll tell you what happened to me a couple of months ago. It was on a Sunday, here at the house, like I am just like, listen, I can go for days and not even brush my hair. It's long. I keep it in a bun. I don't worry about it. I wear pajamas all day.
I
If I
do the
don't have to go
hat.
like I just wear pajamas all day if I don't have to go anywhere. That's just what I do. And I was just sitting on my bed one Sunday playing a game on my phone, and my phone rings, and it's Alan and Kathy Podwell. And they were having lunch, and I was like, oh my God, Kathy Podwell. It was just weird. And then the day before I interviewed Lee J. McCluskey, he called, and I was like, when I was growing up, I never would have dreamed that I would get phone calls from these celebrities. I'm just like, wow. And
Right.
so, yeah, but I'll tell you, they are the nicest people ever. And when I was at Southfork, Donna Mills and Linda Gray, Lisa and Linda Gray
They're
is
both
so kind.
85. They don't even look it.
I know. And so she is so kind. They're so kind, so gracious. And they don't act like they're stars. They really don't act like Amy Stotch was like, what, you think I'm a celebrity? And I was like, of course you are. I mean, even Cherie felt the same. And I'm like, how do you not recognize who you are and what you've done in the world? They just don't. They're so humble.
And I've been friends with Omri Katz for about 18 years now. And I
Yeah.
help out. He comes in with the Hocus Pocus people, and they do this big event, a big weekend in Salem, Mass every October. And I help them out, and I've picked them up at the airport. And I was out in California, and we just met up at a burrito place and hung out. And they're just people.
Yeah.
And I love what's interesting is in 2018, when I was down at Southfork for the big 40th anniversary, I had to do an interview with them in the hotel in downtown Dallas. I had a 15-minute block because they were doing the media, just cycling you through like a cattle call. Mm-hmm. And I get on the elevator, or I'm going down on the elevator and to get something, and Patrick's coming off, and we're just like, oh, hey, how's it going? Well, and we're just greeting each other like we hadn't seen each other in a week or two or a month or something. And for the great thing for me is seeing the fans that have not met them before and their reactions and their interactions and just the excitement. And it's so different now, just being on the other side of all of this and getting them to come on podcasts or just conversations with Charlene for talking. And I go, oh, Charlene, but by the way, we've been on the phone for 3.5 hours, and it's just but yeah, it's weird. You almost have to pinch yourself at times just to go, did that just happen?
Yeah.
But now you get to a point where it's just like they're part of your fabric, and they're just people.
Yeah, but last August, when I came down on that Saturday morning, I came, everybody's set up. It's time for photos and autographs and all that. But when I walked into that room, and there's Patrick Duffy, Charlene Tilton, Linda, like all of them, I looked around and I was like, what am I doing here? Like, these are the people that my mom loves Dallas. Like I was more, which I like Dallas too. I was more not saying my mom loved it, and her favorite character was Sue Ellen. Like my mom loved Sue Ellen, and so I grew up with that. And to be in the room with him, I'm like, what's going? It was almost like a dream. It's almost like it wasn't really happening. I can't explain it, but I was just like, I'm standing in here breathing the same air as these people that I watched growing up. It's wild. It is wild.
That's the reaction I had when I was walking around Southfork in 2008 for the first time, and the cast is there. Susan Howard was there, and Rosanna Christensen, who played Teresa, was there, the maid. And they had Denon Simpson, and I'm walking from one part to the other, and in front of me happened to be Audrey Landers walking. I go, I'm walking in the same place that I was watching on television, and there is one of the cast members right there in front of me. I'm going, what? I'm like, wake up.
I know it's a really wild feeling. I can't explain it to anybody, but when you have done it and you felt it, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like, and when I got to meet Joan, Michelle, and Donna, like I was just like, Lord, you know, if you take me on home now, I've lived my dream, because I love those ladies, you know. And I don't know if you know or not, anyway, I'm an author, and I had written 3 children's books in 22, 23, 21, 22, and 23. And they're all about, like, they're anti-bullying, about acceptance and all that. And so I took each one of them the set, and I told Donna, I said, you know, you can give this to your grandson, because she has a little grandson. I think he's about 1 now. And so I gave them to them. I stood at her table forever, like at her dinner table, because I had given Jones and Michelle's right after the photo ops. Donna was busy talking to Morgan Fairchild. So then I told my son, I said, well, you know, because he went with me, I was like, I missed it. I said, I'll try to give it to her tomorrow at the photo table. And Adam texted me. I had my pajamas on. I was already getting ready to get to bed. He goes, Donna is in the bar. You can go sit.
That was the great thing about that place, is they were just hanging out.
Everybody's together. And so I put my clothes back on. I grabbed that bag, because I took him a gift bag. You know, I took the treatment. I took the letter I written to him. I took the 3 books. And so I took it down, and I looked everywhere. She was in the restaurant by that time, her and Morgan and Michelle Lee. And I thought, oh my God, I hate to walk up to their dinner table. So, but I was like, I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm going to go for it. All they can say is like, how dare you? And I'll be sad and I'll go home. But, you know, I walked up and I said, I'm sorry to interrupt dinner. And they were like, we haven't even ordered yet. And I stood there 20 minutes talking to them. And just, you know, and the conversation was so easy. I wasn't nervous. And I told Donna, I said, you know, I brought you this gift. And Michelle goes, yeah, she gave me and Joan ours today. So she thanked me. And the next day when I went to her table, she called me by my name. She said, Christy. And I was like, and she said, I looked at your books, and she said, you are so talented. And I was like, Donna Mills is so talented. I mean, so it means so much when you're with the people that you respect and that you have loved, you know, and love their work. So yeah, it's crazy.
And I know everyone, they would always hear from Larry, Linda, Patrick, and Steve, and just that Charlene, that sort of group. But I've always been one that wants to dig into the other cast members and hear their stories. So I mentioned Deborah Bernard, who played Sly in 2008. So I had emailed her to do a story for Ultimate Dallas, and 3 weeks later, I was at Southfork, and Denon Simpson, who played Kendall, was there. And I went over when I met her, and I said, I just met Deb Bernard a few weeks ago. She said I should give you her email address. And Denon didn't know who I handed. It happened really fast, and then nothing came of it. And then I ended up writing questions for somebody for an interview they were doing with Deborah Trinelli a couple of years later. And I said, oh, so I messaged Deborah Trinelli, and I said, I have Deb Bernard's information. Let me connect. They had the 3 of them had fallen out of touch after the show went off the air. So I reunited them, and I remember going down to New York in 2013, early June, and met up with Deb Bernard and Deb Trinelli, and we had lunch. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to make it my goal for Ultimate Dallas to get the 3 of them, Deb, and Denon, the 3 Ds, to do an interview for Ultimate Dallas. Years go by, we're plugging away. And then finally in 2024, their first interview together was on the Ewing Barbecue Podcast.
Oh, Oh,
And
wow.
I actually connected them with the organizer of the Hollywood show, and that was their first public appearance
Oh
together.
my gosh,
And
that's
then I
so awesome.
and then I got them on for the Southfork Experience last August, and you were there for that, and you met them, right? When you're
I don't think so. I was so focused on the Not Slaining ladies, and then I did come in the room and I met Amy, Cherie, Janine, Charlene. I didn't even get to meet Patrick. I was at
oh,
Linda, but I didn't get to meet Patrick because he didn't have anybody at his table. And I was talking to Charlene, and then when I looked, then he had a whole line. And I was like, "Oh, I'll come back." And then I didn't. Yeah. So
mm.
unfortunately, so
But it was just, and they were so grateful that on my birthday in 2024, Deb Bernard, who you know is a singer with Al Sapienza, they do an act together. They were opening for Darlene Love in the Fifth Dimension on my birthday in New Jersey. So she had me come. They had me come down. Deb Trinelli picked me up at my hotel. We went over to the arena backstage. They had a birthday cake for me. They had dinner. They all sang to me, and then they put Deb Trinelli and I in the front row for the concert.
oh man,
And
awesome.
yeah, it's in a way, it's almost like we're joking that, oh, I'm Charlie and they're the angels.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I call Alan. Because he has me, Kathy, and Cherie, and
Mhm.
I'm like, you're Charlie, and we're the angels.
Oh, so we're all on the same wavelength here.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about the podcast. So in 2019, you started, or okay, so I don't want to say you started it, but
Right.
let's
Yeah.
talk about. Tell us how the podcast came to be.
Okay. So before that, I had been doing all the interviews for Ultimate Dallas and maintaining their social media for a man named Colin Hunter, who had started the Ultimate Dallas website. But I think it was one of the first Dallas fan websites in 1997. I think he started it. And I think there was only that one and one that was based out of Stuttgart, Germany
Wow.
at the time. So he had me doing all of the stuff, and we were on set at one point, and then TNT hired us as publicity consultants for the first season, which basically was they wanted to fact check the show. They contacted us for what happened, what didn't happen, so they would be maintain continuity. Well, that went off the rails after they didn't bring us back, but that's another story. Um, so I was doing that, and then in 2018, I went down for the 40th anniversary, and I was doing a lot of live Facebooking for Ultimate Dallas down there, just of the event and everything, and doing the interviews. And I met up with Mary Hutter from then living in Washington, who was also a huge Twin Peaks fan. She does all the Twin Peaks events, and Sarah Price, um, and their friend Will Kane, who was from the UK. And we hung out a little bit and stuff like that. And then the event ended, and then early 2019, Mary contacts me and said, "I'm starting a podcast with Sarah and Will, and you're on the Ultimate Dallas end, so you want to come on and do it, and we're going to do a rewatch podcast. So we start with Digger's Daughter, and we work our way forward and talk about each episode." Yeah, that sounds like fun. I could do that. I'll talk about Dallas any day of the week, even in the middle of the night in my sleep. And then Will couldn't commit to the podcasts because Mary was out in Washington State. Sarah was in Alabama. I'm in Boston. Will's in the UK. The time difference is it just would not work for him, so he dropped off. A few episodes in, we had our first special episode was when it was right around the time Ken Kercheval died. So I pulled an interview I did with him from Ultimate Dallas, and we incorporated pieces of it, him talking into a podcast. So we had some audio from Ken telling his story. And then at one point, Melanie, who I had met at the fan source dinner, and we kind of kept in touch. She lived in Maine. I lived down here in Boston, and I actually went up to a Memorial Day event at her house in Maine one year. And she said, "Oh, I can I get on? And I said, let me contact Mary, because Mary is the producer, and I don't want to step on Mary's toes or anything like that. So I convinced them. I said, let's have Melanie come in, and they said, all right, we'll see how she does. And she's been with us ever since. So and we started in 2019. So we're now we're in the middle of our 7th season.
Wow.
And we're on season 7 of the show.
And you've had 200 and some episodes, right? Or
if you count all the cast interviews and special guests and offshoots and things, we've probably pushed around in the 200 ballpark, because we were doing a lot of all the advertising podcasts for the Southfork Experience, because we would have all the guests on, cast members on to promote the event. And one of them was the guy that came up with the event initially, Josh Henderson. And I met him back in 2012, and I got his phone number. We talk on the phone, we text back and forth. He says, oh, come visit me in Las Vegas if you're ever out that way. Swing by, So I even stayed with his mother down in Dallas for some time in 2015 or 14, 15, somewhere around there. And that's how we got on the set at different times. And it was just, you just form these connections. But so we were going along, steamrolling along, doing episodes. And I said, let me take the connections I have to the cast that I formed through Ultimate Dallas and we can try to bring some of them on. So we had them on, and I remember doing an interview with David Jacobs for Ultimate Dallas.
Oh,
and after he passed, I gave Mary the audio from that episode, and she posted it in one of our places. And it's funny, Melanie also was helping out with transcribing for Ultimate Dallas. When we would do the interviews, she would do the written interview, because she's a wonderful transcriber. She does a great job at that. Something I couldn't do myself. I couldn't sit there and try to write down everything. And since both of us are on there, I almost feel like the podcast is in a way is a quasi spin-off of Ultimate Dallas in a way. And since 2 of us were from Ultimate Dallas, but over the years we brought Will Kane finally showed up last August when he came to Southfork for that event. And we brought in Brad Mulholland, who's one of our Patreon subscribers, as another co-host who's got a great radio voice. And Mary brought him in. So there's about 5 or 6 of us, and our consultant that we brought in during these events has been Jana Tim, who used to work at Southfork Ranch.
Oh, wow.
She was like the director of tour guides and stuff like that. So she's been with us, and we just have a great team that it's really all of us that bring stuff in, and everyone has their little niche.
Yeah, so professional. I mean, you have people that really know. It's not just like, like me sitting down talking about all saying. You have people that have worked and that really know stuff about the show and know about, the stars and stuff. And that's awesome.
Right. And Mary does all the, as I said, she produces, has the main recording on her computer, and she'll do the editing, and she does takes care of the financials, the Patreon subscribers and everything like that. And so she's really the heart of the group. And we just kind of all throw our pieces in. With
what I call that? The brains of the operation.
The brains of the operation. Yes.
Brains of the operation, like the center.
Right. I mean, I like the ability to have the interplay with the cast that I've formed the relationships with over the years. So they're all willing to jump in. And an amazing thing happened when we were in Burbank at the Hollywood show. We got invited to a dinner the night before. Charlene Tilton was organizing it with Sue Cabral, who was the makeup artist on Dallas, and Kerry Scott Nair, who was the prop master on the show. And Charlene contacted me, and Denon Simpson came, and Deb Trinelli was there. And Charlene contacted me and said, can you call Omri Katz and tell him to come and bring Josh Harris? And then they showed up, and their tutor was there, Sharon Sachs. And it was just a great dinner. And then That weekend we went in, Mary, Melanie, Sarah, and myself went in for the group photo op, and the entire cast started applauding the podcast. There were 25 members of the cast. Priscilla Presley was there, Amy, Lee, Lee McCluskey was there. It's just, and they all started applauding it. We walked out of there and we said, what the hell just happened in there?
Yeah.
Was that? And so I went up to Deb Trinelli and Deb Bernard started it. So I went over to them and I said, what was all that applause? They said, well, you guys really are part of the cast. You're honorary cast members. The stuff that you guys do in the podcast to keep the show alive and just keep us in people's thoughts and everything. It's just, so you guys deserve that. So
yeah, you really do. I mean, you really do, because think of all the shows that were beloved, like the Andy Griffith Show. I don't know anybody that's doing podcasts about that, and people could, but I mean, yeah, but what you're doing is like fantastic to keep it.
And I see a lot of rewatch podcasts turning up, but they're run by cast members. You have Keenan and Lakin doing the step-by-step one.
Yeah.
You had Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling doing Smallville, and you have Donna, Joan, and Michelle doing their podcast.
Yeah.
And it's just, I feel like we came in early in the rewatch thing, right before the Corona pandemic too, and that's what helped actually build an audience, because people started finding the show again.
Yeah.
You're locked in your house, and you can only bake so much sourdough bread. Just ask Patrick Duffy.
that was a huge explosion for. Well, you know what? That's honestly that year, because I had breast cancer that year, 2020, of all the years to have it. I had it that year, and I was like, I didn't feel as bad because I was in the house and everybody else was too. But that's when I really found YouTube. I was laying in bed, couldn't get up from chemo, and that's when I really found a lot of podcasts on YouTube. And I think a lot of people did, because, like you said, people were at home and they didn't really have anything else to do. So,
and that was around the time my sister actually got breast cancer. Around that time, and she unfortunately passed in 23. But and working those events though, and helping out and just being part of it, and then you go to all these celebrity conventions. I found them to be very expensive, so I started volunteering and working at them. So I'll do celebrity escort and security and line control and all these events, and it gives you a different perspective being on the other side. We had one in Marlborough, Massachusetts last September, TerrorCon, and Omri Katz was there with the Hocus Pocus people, and Elvira was there, and Linda Blair, and all these people. Well, all of our phones started screeching at the same time. There's a tornado 2 miles from your building, so everybody got shoved in the basement.
Oh my gosh.
So we're down there with Elvira and Linda Blair and the Annabelle doll and John Carroll Lynch, who played Twisty the Clown on American Horror Story. And
so you're stuck in a basement with all this. Yeah, I would be like, no, this is not my life.
And one of the kids, he was in the movie It that came out in 2017. He played Georgie. He wanted to go out and watch the tornado. He was 16 years old. And I said, no, Jackson, I'm going to carry you down to the basement if I have to. And then I said, oh, by the way, where's your father, who was his manager? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, don't you think if you're going to die in a tornado, you'd like to have your father with you? And he looked at me, his eyes popped out of his head, and he's like, oh God, what is this guy saying to me? But
that's funny.
These events, they put you in the world of these people, and from a different perspective, and you just have conversations, and but the podcast, that was just getting that recognition from them was very special.
I bet. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I just, like I said, I was so appreciative of the kind words that Donna said to me about my books. I can't imagine like having applause and all that, and knowing that they really appreciate what you're doing for them. And because listen, that's work that they did close to, well, almost 5 decades ago, and it's still being appreciated. And so I'm sure that they do appreciate you guys for showing that, because like with not singing, and I hate to keep popping back to that, but that's what I know.
Well, it's a spin-off. It's very appropriate.
Yeah, and so there was so many storylines that when I was growing up that I really related to. Like the relationship between Olivia and Abby. Like, me and my mom didn't have the best relationship either. And so I really related to that. And so everything that you see, I mean, when you watch it from week to week, for 14 years, it helps to shape who you are as a person. It really does. And I think that I think that's the one thing they don't understand is
Right.
that they come into our living rooms every week for 14 years. 14 years. That's a long time. And so it does help to shape who you are as a person. And I think that being on their side of it, yeah, it was a job. I saw last week on their podcast, it comes out on Tuesdays, and I saw a lot of the comments on YouTube that people can be so mean, and people are saying, for God's sakes, can you at least watch an episode before you talk about it? How can you not know what you did? I'll tell you why. First of all, because it's been 45 years.
Right.
They're older. And second of all, if you ask me to tell you about a certain character in any one of my 9 books, I would be hard pressed to do that too, because that's a work that you create, then you move on. And Donna Mills wasn't just Abby. Michelle Lee wasn't just Karen. They had work before, work after. So I'm like, give them a break, people. They're not going to remember everything like we do. Yeah, of course I remember it all, but they don't.
It reminds me of that Saturday Night Live sketch where William Shatner was hosting, and they were at the Star Trek convention. And people were asking questions about minute details about the show. And at one point he goes, "Would you people get a life? My God, what are you doing with yourself? Have you ever kissed a girl? Have you ever done?" And then the manager leans over and goes, and he goes, "Well, what I was just referring to, that was me impersonating an episode from back in."
I love him. And what I love him from? Boston Legal, one of my all-time favorite shows. Yeah. Denny Crane. All I want to do in my whole
Alan
life,
Shore and Denny Crane. We're flamingos.
All I want to do is go up to William Shatner and whisper in his ear, Denny Crane. That's what I want to do. Oh, that's all I want to
do. and my father's friend, David Kelly, was the creator of that show.
And Ally McBeal. Oh my
Ally McBeal, Chicago Hope, Boston Public.
Yeah.
Picket Fences.
Yes. I mean, all those shows. Listen, but Boston Legal is one of my all-time top 5 favorite shows.
Which was a spinoff of The Practice.
Yeah.
With Dylan McDermott. Yeah.
But it was so like, listen, it was wild. It was like talk about, like risque, but it was good. It was good writing,
like
good acting.
When they went before the Supreme Court and and Alan Shore is doing his thing and he goes, "Clarence Thomas, if you agree with me, just blink." Because Clarence never speaks. But
I know, I love that show. But listen, that would be, if I could just get to meet William Shatner, and so, which I did go to the Fanboy event in Knoxville in 2021 when he was there. But it was right after COVID, and they had the plexiglass up between us. So I got my picture with him, but I couldn't talk to him. I was like, "Hey," or whatever, and I was nervous. But I would just love to just go, Denny Crane.
Oh, I did that. I did have a chance to meet him, and
wow.
Yeah, it's like when I met Kiefer Sutherland, and everyone was going up saying, "Jack Bauer, Jack Bauer, Jack Bauer," and I went over to him, and he had just finished doing the Designated Survivor, which he played the president. And I went over and I went, "Mr. President, it's a pleasure to meet you."
Oh, yeah. Something different. Yeah.
And I remember you keep going to Knots Landing. I remember meeting Lynn Moody in 2012 when I was down at Chiller in New Jersey, right before Hurricane Sandy. We actually had to evacuate because of the hurricane. And she gave me her Knots Landing cast vest that they were given as gifts. So I have started going around and having the cast members sign it. So I brought it down to Dallas in August, and I had Joan, Michelle. And the first person to sign it was Brian Austin Green, because I'd worked with him at the 90s convention just before. And it was just, getting them around to people. And I had Stephen Macht, who played his Karen's brother.
Yep.
He was at TerrorCon in September, so he signed it, and he had great stories too. Just
I
like,
need to start going to more of these shows. That's what I need to do. I mean, I
yeah.
need to start going out to more of the events.
I
So,
even oh, I even had Pam Grier sign it, who was in one episode.
oh,
She played a cop with Herb Edelman, who was
yep,
Stanley Spornak on
yep,
the Golden Girls,
yep.
and
When Danny
oh,
got killed, they were
yep,
trying to figure out who killed him.
and he also played Christina Pickle's husband on Saint Elsewhere.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I just remember I brought it over to her and had her sign it and everything. And it's just when you bring things to these people and they have done obscure roles.
Yeah.
Like bringing this Dallas record album, which I've had everybody sign since 2008. I'll send you a picture of it. And I brought it over to Kate Mulgrew, who was in one episode of Dallas as Garnet McGee.
Yeah.
I brought it to Christine Taylor, who was famous for playing Marcia in the Brady Bunch movies.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Oh my God, that's the first job I had after doing Hey Dude." She was in one episode. She was in Conundrum. She played Cliff Barnes' daughter when he was in that dream sequence.
Wow.
And I think it was Jason London, who was on, I think, Party of Five.
Mm-hmm.
He played someone in rehab with Sue Ellen in the new series in one episode,
Wow.
a rehab counselor. And he was so excited. He had his manager take a picture of the album cover. So it's just, when you bring up the obscure roles with people, they tend to appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's like with Amy, she had played a young Valene in one flashback scene in like 1983 or something.
Right.
And I told her, I said, you're not going to believe this. I said, but about 2 weeks before I interviewed her, I said, like 2 weeks ago, I clipped that and shared it on one of our Knots Landing groups, because that's one of my favorite scenes, because Valene was young and it shows her and Gary when they first looked at each other and fell in love. Mm-hmm. And she was like, "You remember that?" And I was like, "Absolutely. It's one of my favorite scenes." So yeah.
I just recently recorded a podcast with her, and I still have to edit that, but I brought that role up as well. I said, Amy, in a roundabout way, you played Charlene Tilton's mother.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And she's like, "What? What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, you played a young Valene who was Charlene, was Lucy's mother." And she's like, "Oh my God, you're connecting the dots here and all this stuff."
Yeah, but we remember that stuff. We do. I mean, super fans, we remember all of that. So
I always play a game instead of 6 Degrees of Dallas, it's 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, 6 Degrees of Dallas.
Yeah.
And then Brad Pitt being on Dallas, I brought that up with Omri Katz and Josh Harris.
That.
Steve Canale directed an episode, and he didn't even remember him.
Who did he play?
He played Priscilla Presley's daughter, Shalane McCall's boyfriend on the show.
Oh, wow.
And Steve actually had to beat him up in a barn, and he doesn't even remember it.
Wow.
Because he caught them in a barn, and I'm going, well, Ray, that's a little hypocritical when you were in the barn with your niece in the first season.
Oh my gosh.
I said, don't go there. Don't go there.
I love it. I love that. I love that there's people, because look, none of my friends, my real life friends, none of my friends understand me, because I have no real friends other than in the Knots groups who share the love of Knots Landing like I do. Like they don't, some of my friends have never even watched it. And I'm like, how are we even friends? So I love that there's people like you who I can be a super fan with, and you don't think I'm weird, and like I can look at you guys and go like, how you feel, like we understand that love for a show. So
right. And I remember episodes where, you remember LA Law?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a rival of Knots Landing.
That's why I didn't watch LA Law. And my parents were watching LA Law because David Kelly was working on it, and he's a friend of the family. But Alan Ratchins was in one episode of Dallas, but you never saw his face. He was the doctor when Sue Ellen was brought in after her car crash when she was pregnant. He was the doctor in the operating room. You could hear his voice.
Yeah.
And you have a Morgan Fairchild, obviously, originated Jenna Wade. And I actually had to work with her in August at her table the first day of the event. And she's a sweetheart. She's really nice.
Yeah. But, she is. Yeah. Listen, when I was at like I said, that her and Michelle and Donna were having dinner or getting ready to order. I was talking to Donna, and I glanced at Morgan, and for some reason I just stopped and I went, my God, you are so beautiful. Like, her beauty just caught me off guard, so much so that I just stopped what I was saying to Donna, and she went, thank you. And I was like, I just couldn't believe, but it was like, she is so like perfect. She's so beautiful.
And I remember we talked about her connection to Pee Wee Herman, because I said, how did you end up in Pee Wee's Big Adventure at the end there with James Brolin, which was shot on the set of Hotel, because they yeah. But she told me a story about how they knew each other. And so I snuck in my Pee Wee Herman impression for her. And she goes, you do that too well.
Oh my gosh.
But
Listen,
yeah.
It's just like, I know, I love it. I love it. And I'm looking forward to next year. I wish they would have had it this year, but of course, they didn't. So I'm looking forward to next year. Getting my I haven't even got my tickets yet. I thought, well, I'm a little time passing and get them. So,
and that, for everybody out there, is the Southfork Experience year number 3, going to be February 12th to 14th on 2027.
Yeah.
So that's just under a year away from now. And I know they've already announced, if you go on the website, I'm doing a little mini podcast every time something new is up on the website, just trying to help people tour the website and navigate it. But they've already have Patrick, the big 5, Patrick, Linda, Charlene, Steve, and Cherie are all confirmed. So where they go from there is a mystery.
I'm hoping Kathy can get in, go. Everybody loves Callie. So, yeah. So I was going to ask you, if you could have on one dream guest. I mean, it sounds like you've had everybody on, but if you could have on one dream guest on your podcast that you haven't had yet, who would it be?
Oh, let's go for the gold and say Victoria Principal.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, she don't do anything, does she? She is like, she stays hidden.
She's like Greta Garbo with her animals. She's on her farm. Yeah. She's living her life the way she wants to, and all the power to her. But she has posted about Dallas on her social media. She posted a 100th birthday to Priscilla Pointer, and then Priscilla Pointer just passed away recently. And you had a lot of big names. She was Amy Irving's mother-in-law at one point, or Steven Spielberg's mother-in-law, rather. She's Amy Irving's mother. You had, God, who was I just thinking of? William Smithers, Tina Louise, who played Julie Gray, was on. And just a lot of, but yeah, Victoria Principal would probably be the one that everyone would go after.
Yeah, I think so. Because like I said, she is just so like, she doesn't, because I was like, where is she at? Why didn't she come? But somebody told me that she doesn't need the money. She doesn't want the notoriety. Like, she just wants to live her life. And that's fine. Yep. But, so many fans would love to see her. Can you imagine the line at her table? Everybody loved Pam. Everybody loved Pam. She was the sweet one. Everybody, gosh, who didn't love Pam?
And who else out there? Deborah Shelton would be nice to get in there. Mary Crosby, whom I did meet at Southfork in 2008. She was there. And I'm throwing out guests to the Southfork Experience organizers, people like that. Morgan Brittany, we've had her on the podcast. She's a sweetheart. She at one point was writing a book. I don't know where that is in production, but Joan Van Ark came on, and I had Jack Scalia was a great guest too. He just talked and then they contacted me after and they said, that was so relaxed. It didn't feel like an interview, because I stopped writing questions for these people and I more come up with bullet points. Yeah. And let the conversation flow that way, like a river. Because if you come up with a list of questions and then you don't ask certain questions, I would feel like I failed, because I didn't ask this question. I didn't ask that question. But if it evolves and just lets it flow, then it's, we've had some great reunions on there. We had Kathy, Cherie, Alan, and Michael Priest, the producer the director rather. Josh Harris and Omri Katz, that was great. And we had Audrey Landers and Lee McCluskey, who played brother and sister, and they they had not spoken or seen each other since they went to Israel in 1982 with
Wow.
Steve and Susan Howard.
Wow.
Susan Howard would be great too, but she's not interested in that sort because she was supposed to be at Southfork in August, but she had to back out for other reasons at that
Mhm.
time. So maybe they can reschedule her. But
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, she was a big part of the show too. Gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's so many. I mean, well, you know what? Just you'll get them. You'll get them on. So
Right,
keep
get
on.
get the mother around, and someone said to me, "Oh, how much longer can some of these people be doing these things? Like Linda's 85, this that," and I said, Linda will decide when Linda is done
Yeah,
because Barbara Eden and William Shatner are 94 and they're
I
still doing the
know.
circuit.
They're still
So
going. Yeah,
so
I love
it's
it.
yeah, it's up to them. And we're coming up on 50 years in
Oh,
2028. So
shucks.
it's
Mm. Yeah, I think they have to stick around and do the 50th reunion or 50th anniversary. So yeah,
that'll be the
yeah,
big one. As
yeah.
Red Fox said on San Francisco. That'll be the big one.
Yep. Listen, thank you so much for coming on today. This has been so much fun. Like I said, I love that there's other people who understand me and my love for a show and for characters and for the actors. And just, we appreciate their work and those hard work.
Right.
Those were long days that they put in. And
And
so,
they were part of a show that helped bring about the fall of communism. I mean, you hear stories about Parliament stopping sessions so people could go home and watch Dallas,
uh-huh.
and their uh, dictator in Romania who said, "Oh yeah, let them see how nasty the people in the West are," and episodes of Dallas would come in, and people would say, "Oh, we can live like that," and they started rising up against their governments, and there were college course studies on this. There's a book out there by Ian Ang, who was a woman who wrote about the cultural and social impact of Dallas, and
Wow.
it's an important show in the history of television. And
Yeah, it is.
now that Netflix might buy up Warner Brothers,
Mm-hmm.
there could be an opening for possibly reviving something. I mean, in the form of, we've always joked on the podcast about how they should do a Dallas the middle years, like in the 60s,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
or do little mini series like Yellowstone has done with
Mhm.
1883, 1908 or 1888, 1923, and 1944, just so you can fill in these different decades of where
Yeah.
the story was. And
Yeah.
there's so
How it
much
developed.
landscape there
Yeah, I
that
love that.
it's an
Yeah.
untapped gold mine that they still have going there. So,
Yeah, I would listen. I would love for Netflix to do something with Mount Scenic. Like I said, my treatment is out there. I put it in the world, and if it happens, it happens. I would love that. Like, I would love
mm-hmm.
for something to come of it. I don't know, but you never know. I mean, we don't ever know. I never 5 years ago, I never would have dreamed I would be doing this.
Well,
So
when Patrick Duffy had them kill him off, did he ever think that he was going to come back a year later?
I know. I know.
Which is why they did not want to kill off Pam because they did not know
Yeah.
how serious Victoria was. So
Mhm. Yeah.
Patrick says never say never because Dallas is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, it is. I love that. I love that. So, listen, thank you. I really appreciate it. We're going to link all of your social media stuff on the screen, and people can find you and follow you on Facebook, and just put all your links on there. We'll also link the Southfork Experience if people want to get
Yep.
tickets for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I know Mary, Brad, Sarah, Melanie, myself, we're going to start some new episodes in the near future. Mary's had some stuff she's had to take care of off camera that have taken her away. We've been on a little hiatus, but once Mary's ready to go, we're ready to go, and I'll keep trying to slip in a few special episodes here and there. We had an author, Billy Ray Bates, who actually has the book. I pull it up here just for Destination Dallas.
Ooh, that's a beautiful
That
cover. I love those
that
colors.
that is on
Orange color.
Amazon. I met her at Chiller in 2012,
Yeah.
and she actually got had me send her photos that she's used in the book. She's
Wow.
collected photos from other people. So,
Oh my goodness.
and we had on Martin O'Brien, who's putting together a documentary on Larry Hagman, who's
Wow.
it's out there. So
I
um,
love that.
it's still going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it will
Uh,
live on forever. It really will. I mean, as long as there's people like you and people that come after you, it could live on forever. I mean, for real. It was
mhm.
just such a, like you said, an important part of TV of people's lives. Look, when I was young, I can remember the whole summer seeing buttons and T-shirts and bumper stickers and hats. Who shot JR? Like,
Yeah,
and that being the biggest thing ever that summer. I was like, who shot JR? And being in front of the TV to watch it when it came back on.
it was you, Kristen, who shot JR.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it was
Linda.
nice.
But
So that's
yeah,
lovely.
it was a thing, and then Patrick coming. But well, we don't want to go into Bobby coming out of the shower because
Yeah,
that kind of turned it a little for some
yeah,
people. So,
yeah, yeah. I did.
but
It did.
if they didn't have the guts to do that, then you wouldn't have seen Saint Elsewhere make their whole show in the mind of Chad Allen's character, and there's that whole universe of Tommy Westfall that all these shows tie back to Saint Elsewhere and don't
Mhm.
exist. And you wouldn't have seen Roseanne or the most famous one, Newhart.
Newhart. I was getting ready to say Newhart. Yeah, because at the end he wakes up and she's like, "What?" And he's like, they're in the bed
Suzanne Plachette is not Mary Franz.
yeah. So yeah, I mean it's true. It's like they really did do something with that. I know people weren't happy, but it doesn't bother me. Like I don't look at it and go, "That's a deal breaker for me." It wasn't a deal breaker. So
Right. And I remember that episode when he came out, aired on my birthday.
wow. Oh, cool.
And my parents took me out to dinner, and I said, "We need to be home before 9, by 5 minutes of 9. Let's go, let's go, let's go." We went to Bennigan's. I'm like, "All right, sing the song. Let's sing the birthday thing. Let's get out of here. Gotta get home."
Yeah.
But it was appointment television because you had three networks.
Hmm.
VCRs were not a big thing
Yeah.
early on, so
Yeah.
and who knows how to work a VCR
Yeah.
sometimes. It's just sits there flashing 12, but
Yeah.
you had to program it and hope it went right. Now you have
Yeah.
DVRs and streaming and
Yeah.
this and that. And they certainly did not think we would be talking about this
I
50 years
know.
later.
I know. It's changed so much. I like, looking back, like I had posted a couple clips from Not Planning, I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago, where in one of the early seasons, Diana was sitting there with Sid, her dad, and they had used a stand-in actress, and because Diana had she had long hair, and then when they used the stand-in actress at the foot of the bed, she had a short wig on. And I was like, look at this. So I did a clip and then I did a clip, and people were like, because they didn't expect us to be watching it 40 years later, looking.
Right. And something I picked up on even the first time it aired, when when Bobby got up and he was leaving Pam's house the morning he got run over, you see him at the foot of the bed putting on his cowboy boots. When he got run over by the car, he is wearing black shoes.
Oh, yeah.
I picked up on that right away. And all these years later, so finally at that dinner with Kerry Scott Nair, who was the prop master, I said, "Who was the continuity expert in that episode?" Because Patrick had on, and he said, "Nope, that was intentional. There were laws that you were not allowed to wear boots if you were doing a stunt like that.
Oh, wow.
So he had to wear the shoes so that they were aware that he was wearing black shoes."
Oh, wow.
I said, "Well, couldn't you have made them brown shoes, like the color of his boots, or the boots black, like the color of the shoe?" But people don't think you're going to be watching this all these years
Yeah,
later.
because when they showed it, it was a one and done. Like you said, VCRs weren't popular. It was a one and done. You watched it, that was it. But 50 years later, you're able to watch it streaming, and you can pick up all the stuff. You can catch it all. Yeah. So.
Right. And then you have revivals, and
Mhm.
whether you call them reboots or continuations or sequels or prequels or whatever, you have all these things. And because in some ways Hollywood's run out of ideas, but in other looking at it on the flip side, sometimes people want what they had back when they were younger and see where these people are now.
Yep,
So
absolutely. I would rather watch a revival of a show that I grew up with than anything that Hollywood puts out now. As a matter of fact, I don't watch what I do watch because, like, there was an actress like Holly Gagnier or Gagnier, I'm not sure. Anyway, she posted on her group the other day, and she said, "My dad was a director of photography on Not Planning for 10 years," and I said, I literally just watched you on Murder She Wrote 3 days ago because, like, that's what I watched. Murder She Wrote, Not Landing. I watch all the old stuff. I don't watch anything
Mhm.
new. I couldn't tell you anything about the stuff that people are talking about on my Facebook. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking because I don't watch new stuff
Although,
all the
although
time.
growing up in the '80s, I do watch Stranger Things.
Yeah, I did. I don't watch that. My son watches
Oh,
that or watched it, and
and
my
in
sister does.
fact, working with Omri and the Hocus Pocus people up in Salem, one of the organizers of that weekend, he is a street performer up there, and he said to me, "Oh, I made $2,000 in one weekend in tips up there." And I'm like, "Doing what?" And he said, "People just coming up and taking pictures with me and my character and throwing money in the jar." So
Wow.
now I've taken on the persona of Vecna from Stranger Things up in
Oh,
Salem.
wow.
So I have social media for Salem Vecna, and I have it built out, and I'm using AI to put the character in different places around Salem for
Oh,
to publicize him, so that way when I
yeah.
get up there in the fall, I can get that $2,000 in a
Yeah,
weekend.
that's really cool, Susan. Yeah, who don't want that? That's so cool. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be a down payment on a new car, as we were talking about before the
Exactly.
show.
Yeah. We both need a new car. So, but thank you
No.
so much. I really appreciate you being here. Stick around. I want to wrap up, but stick around and we'll chat afterwards. So,
All right.
thank you guys for watching today. I know you have loved this as much as I have. It's always fun talking about Dallas or Not Landing or any of the old shows and the old stars that we grew up with. Tune in again next week for another great episode. And remember that you can do all things through Christ.